Brothers, I know that you have all been waiting for me to return. Together, we will crush the Sun On Yee and take over the city.
I can think of few better signs of a high quality game than the insatiable desire to play more. For 2012, Sleeping Dogs was definitely that game for me. When the credits were rolling, that wasn't enough. I just wanted more Wei Shen, and I wanted more Hong Kong blockbuster action. Luckily for me, and everybody else excited for more Sleeping Dogs, developer United Front Games has promised around 6 months worth of content. So far we've had not much more than cosmetic packs, but finally we have our first major piece of DLC, and it's called Nightmare at North Point.
You see any walking corpses, you give me a call.
Yeah, give him a call, asshole.
Getting it out of the way early, if you are after a serious mission pack, you should probably look elsewhere. Nightmare at North Point is to Chinese horror films what Sleeping Dogs was to Hong Kong action. The premise is as simple as it is lighthearted and goofy. One of Wei Shen's girlfriends is whisked away by a mysterious masked demon, the dead walk the earth, and naturally it is up to Wei to save the day. Makes sense. I think the best way to describe Nightmare at North Point is to think of whenever your favourite TV show does one of those silly variety episodes where the familiar characters in a defined universe are confronted with a popular holiday or silly theme that turns their world upside down. And even though the story is often not part of the main story, it's a humorous what-if scenario, seeing how those characters react to an absurd situation that makes it worth watching. And that's really where this DLC shines. Here we have these familiar characters like Wei Shen, Old Salty, and even the pork bun vendor, thrust into this crazy world of the undead. Instead of sending the player off to another area, the devs have instead revised the North Point sector of the Sleeping Dogs map. So now it's a perpetually smoky, blue tint, and damp spooky night, littered with possessed, glowing-eyed civilians that can attack you on sight. The atmosphere is distinct from the vanilla game, giving the DLC a really great horror vibe, and I like the way it made something old seem kinda new. Another thing I really liked was how this story ties into the main game. Yeah, it's a non-serious side story, not to be taken literally, but there's some cool ties and throwbacks to characters and events from the main Sleeping Dogs story, and that makes the DLC better recommended to players who have actually finished the main game. You might even be spoiled on a couple of things if you play Nightmare first. As for the gameplay, Nightmare offers a handful of main story missions as well as a few side quests, and they mostly all play the same. Remember how I said the DLC is like a familiar TV episode with a twist? Here is your familiarity. The core gameplay mostly consists of hand-to-hand fighting with only one shooting mission and driving reserved from getting from one place to the other. That's about it. But since I was already a fan of the fistfights, I had a lot of fun with the combat, largely thanks to a few twists on the old formula. The Jiangshi, famous Chinese hopping vampire zombie things, make an appearance, complete with a biting zombie attack, and can only be defeated with stun finishing moves. Wei Shen himself owns this supercharged energy punches early on that activate in replacement of the regular face meter and become a necessity for defeating these larger, otherwise invulnerable super demons. Throw in respawning portals that can only be closed by toppling Jiangshi into the gateway, and I found the fights played out a bit more puzzle-like than the usual stuff. But what I like won't necessarily be the same for everybody else, and I will admit the fights do get a bit drawn out, especially since, with the exception of an opening chase sequence and some casual exploration, they make up all of the main and side quests. Whether or not Nightmare at North Point is for you will depend on how much you value that content. You're looking at 1.5 to 2 hours of playtime to complete all the quests, and a little extra to unlock all the gold medals. It's $7 on Steam, and I believe the same for 360 and PS3, and about $5 on Green Man Gaming. Given the lack of truly revolutionary gameplay or new areas, the repetition might not be worth the price of admission for players who are after something a bit more fleshed out and new. For me though, at that price, I viewed it kind of like a movie ticket. A movie ticket to see a new entry in my favourite series. Yeah, it's familiar, but I already enjoyed the familiar stuff to begin with, and in this case I appreciated the thematic overhauls of Sleeping Dogs themes to something so silly and spooky. I had a good few laugh out loud moments in the story, thought the atmosphere was a spot on homage to Chinese horror cinema, enjoyed all the callbacks to the main plot, and the slight changes to the fistfights against demons. I would have liked to see more variety, but the 2 hours I spent with Nightmare at North Point were both time and money well spent. If you're really eager for more Sleeping Dogs, love the fights, and have a flavour for Chinese horror films, you shouldn't be disappointed, especially at this price point. If you're after something a little bit more, maybe wait it out and see what else United Front Games has cooking.